Hey friends, happy Monday, the 29th of January, start to another work week. Nice to take a moment and be with you. I'm Father Bill Hill, priest at Holy Spirit Catholic Community in Rock Springs, Wyoming. I'll take a moment, share with you a reflection on the daily readings. They're linked down below. Click the link, read the readings prayerfully, and then turn off the screen. Spend some time with God before you move on to other things. It is the fourth Monday in Ordinary Time. We're working on the second book of Kings and the Gospel of Mark. Second book of Kings, today and tomorrow we have a story of a palace coup, right? So not the military officers in David's army, but indeed his own son, who has a claim on the throne of Israel, following after King David. And it sounds like whatever's happened, it's gotten really serious. The other tribal leaders, the other leaders of the houses of Israel have shifted their allegiance to Absalom. And it's so bad that David needs to flee. I find this story to be a fascinating tension between preserving his life and maintaining still being the king, but at the same time, surrender to what has happened and getting out of Dodge. So David, flees and he walks weeping and barefooted, and then a member of the house of Benjamin starts to curse him and throw stones and dirt clods at him, and very much taking his life into his own hands. He could be struck down by any of the guards of David, and they want to do it. But David says, even in that moment, maybe he has been given these words to curse me by God, and just continues on his way. We're not in the midst of palace coups. Our children are not overthrowing our leadership. But, where is the Lord inviting us to still preserve what has been given? Where is the Lord inviting us to let go, to surrender, to seek greater acceptance, right? Always a tension and always a challenge of discerning what it is that might be the will of God in that particular moment. The Gospel, Mark's Gospel. Humor is one of the most culturally determined forms of expression. They say that when you can, argue well and when you can tell jokes or understand jokes, you really are fluent in a language and in a culture. This passage is supposed to be fairly amusing. Both the naming of the possessed individual or of the demons is legion, right? Because that's a name for Roman military organization. And then also sending them into pigs, an unclean form of food. We can oftentimes read this and scratch our heads and be like, boy, isn't this like destruction of property? Isn't this challenging what happened to these swineherds? But the scholars tell us that this would have been a fairly hilarious story to a group of Jewish folks or Jewish Christian sorts of folks. Especially my attention in prayer is drawn most towards the conclusion of this, right? Everybody comes and they check out what happens. They approach Jesus, they caught sight of the man who had been possessed by legion, sitting there, clothed and in his right mind. And then in a moment, he's going to plead to be with Jesus. I do wonder, the translation of disciple is one who sits at the feet of another. And he could just be sitting there, right? But I do wonder if there is an indication that the beginning of discipleship is happening with this freed human. They explain what's happened, and they began to beg Jesus to leave the district, right? It's funny the different reception that Jesus is getting here than when he's being begged to stay in Jewish towns. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed pleaded to remain with Jesus. Remember, he's a Gentile. And this is in the area of the Decapolis. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Jesus is not accepting this Gentile student. The mission to the Gentiles is going to come later. But Jesus tells him to go and to announce all that the Lord of Israel, right, has done for him in pity. Then the man went off and began to proclaim in the Decapolis, into these Greek cities, what Jesus had done for him, and all were amazed. Odd, striking, interesting, shocking that a Gentile person is proclaiming the Jewish Messiah in Gentile lands. It is a wonderful mashup. And speaking of the way that this Jewish Messiah had freed him from a terrible, terrible affliction, terrible possession, how am I sharing the good news of what God has done in my life today? And it may be overtly, and it may be a more subtle, simple sort of a way. But how has the Lord changed my life, and how am I going to change the lives of others because of that today? All right? Okay, friends, turn off the screen. Well, read the readings prayerfully. Click that link, and then turn off the screen. Spend some time with God. That silence is, to my estimation, the greatest gift you can give yourself today. Pray for peace in this world. Pray for folks that are having a hard time. God bless you, my friends.